All right, we have another totally rewarding chat. I have Denise Liebetrau with me. Did I get it right?
You got it right.
All right, from Denver. Denver?
Denver.
Are you actually in Denver?
Yeah, really close. Like
Well, that's not
a
in
couple
Denver.
blocks.
So,
But I'm Denver Metro. I'm in Lakewood. I'm in the west side of Denver.
okay. Awesome. Thanks so much. Known you for
Yeah.
a couple years. I'm kind of excited because of the business you have to talk about just overall total rewards. But instead of me screwing up your background, why don't you give me your background in, a couple minutes and then talk about where you are now and how you got there.
Yeah. So I have been doing compensation work primarily for 30 years in a variety of different companies. I spent the first part of my professional life in mostly Fortune 500 companies and big firms that had a large national footprint here in the US or were global. And then a few years ago, about 7 years ago, I started my own consulting firm. I decided that I wanted a little more variety. I wanted to make more of a difference. And so, one part of the firm, my team and I focus on working with employers, anything from less than 100 employees to more than 25,000 employees. You just got to show up with the right attitude and a budget to make sure that you're paying your people correctly. And then the other part of the business is I do pay negotiation coaching. So I teach individuals how to ask for more money and have careers that are more aligned to their values and what is important to them. So that's small as it relates to taking up my time. I do typically do more projects with employers, but if you're a high performer and you've got a unique situation, I can help people negotiate.
Okay.
I think it gives me great empathy for both sides of the house when I'm writing training or doing education materials for employees and managers on what they care about. I understand what they care about because I'm having conversations with them and I don't just have the employer perspective. And my interest now is just continuing to help employers get their compensation houses in order. A lot of times that's the foundation build of building job architecture projects and doing the market pricing and benchmarking for their jobs and helping them meet the pay equity and pay transparency guidelines that are now so prolific around the globe. But yeah, I love it. Can see myself doing this for another at least 10, 20 more years.
What?
Yeah.
No. Okay. I hate tell folks I won't be doing this for 20 years. Um, that's not happening. All right, and this is like the CAPTCHA version. So
Yeah.
what do you do for fun outside of work? And please don't tell me grade jobs. So you must do something else.
No, no, don't do that outside of work. No, I love to read. And I like listening to podcasts and doing things like that. So I'm a nerd at heart, so it's always absorbing information and thought leaders and what's going on in the world and how are people thinking about things. So yeah,
Okay. Well, as the now husband of a librarian, I can get around the reading and get around the reading.
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, recovering, says recovering attorney turned librarian. So
Very good.
yeah, so actually it's this I've gotten into the library thing and how it all works and whatever.
Yeah,
It is
it's pretty
fascinating.
amazing what's free in the library systems these days.
Yeah, and actually now I know. Like it's kind
Yeah,
of crazy how what is and actually even electronic books. Like my
yeah,
advertising, like you're like, wait,
exactly.
what? Like, okay.
Yeah, you don't even have to walk into the library to get your
I
reading
know.
materials anymore. It's awesome.
All right, so before we get to the serious stuff, I have a speed round of questions for you just to get you warmed up.
Okay.
Right, you ready?
Yep.
Are you a coffee or tea person?
Oh, coffee.
Okay, good, thank God.
Coffee.
Yeah, coffee
Black.
one every day.
Yeah, coffee.
Um, Best number of merit cycles to do per year in a company.
One.
Okay. Are you a camping person or like a spa weekend person?
Oh, spa weekend.
Okay. And do you use the term comp ratio or range penetration if given the choice?
Oh, I do both. Tend to lean more toward comp ratio, but I use both for different circumstances. And
Okay.
I've posted about that, so
Okay.
can go
Okay.
both ways. Yeah.
And for those, we will link to her. We'll make sure people can link out
Yeah.
because they do get the newsletter and everything else. And the most important question, and actually I did this poll, I think when I was in Denver, are you a creamy or crunchy peanut butter person?
Creamy.
So weirdly enough, I am too. weirdly enough, Denver was the only place out of I don't even know how many places this year where the majority was crunchy.
Really?
Insert crunchy joke about Colorado,
Yeah,
like,
I was gonna say there's yeah,
but
I don't know.
but literally it's been two-thirds or three-quarters creamy everywhere. And then I asked for that, and I actually got taken aback by I'm like, wait, what?
What?
Um, yeah, so which goes to show how serious my presentations are, because that was actually part
Well,
of the
there's a fair number of health food stores here where you can dump in the peanuts in the machine and it'll grind your own peanut butter fresh. So crunchy, right? So
well,
I
I
don't know.
guess, but depends how much you grind it, I guess.
Yeah,
But
I
okay, so
guess.
you were in the minority in Denver, but the majority nationally. No.
Very good.
So one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you about this is I do know that, your expertise and what you've done, and then you have this wide range of companies. And
Mm.
so I wanted to spend the day just kind of focusing on best practices because we've talked to a couple people who are small co only or do large or they work at one program. And you have this, unique position where, one day you're working with somebody over 25,000 employees and then you've got somebody with a couple hundred. And so, however it goes, like, what are the top two, three, four best practices you see just across the board for comp teams?
Uh, One, a strong data governance. So making sure the data is clean in the HR system and up to date. Sometimes that can be a big challenge in organizations, small or large. So that's one best practice. Two, putting in a job architecture. And by job architecture, I mean standardized job titling, job descriptions, career levels, pay grades, market pricing, the jobs, benchmarking them, and having competitive pay ranges and target incentives, and then having things grouped by job family. That gives you a foundation where you can do pay equity audits. You can efficiently answer senior leaders and managers' questions about pay. And another component I think of in that, in terms of best practices, comp guidelines, processes, documented, written, standardly followed, not doing a whole lot of exceptions or customizing. And then the next thing I would say is listening to employees and to business leaders and trying to find win-win solutions for problems, right? So not just doing exactly what a senior leader says, but also marrying that up with what are employees or members, if you're doing the benefit side as well. What are people concerned about or wanting and why? And then, trying to find solutions that where you can use those needs or those wants from employees and help leaders develop pay programs and rewards that actually help attract and motivate people so that you can meet your business goals.
Okay.
Easy to say, hard to do in practice.
Yeah, so I guess I have questions. So,
Sure.
like, on the data governance side, I mean, who leads that? Like, so for me, that's like that truly is one of those easy to say.
Hard to
I
do.
won't mention the consulting brands by name, but some consultancies are known for here's three things you need to do. It's that simple, and then take off.
It's more complicated than that. Part of it is, what are those key fields? And when you get an employee change form in and somebody's entering the data, if something's not um, filled out or something's not correct, like going back to the person who'd filled out the form and asking, hey, why is this not correct? Or this doesn't match with what we have tied to that job if you've got attributes tied to jobs. So part of it is the functionality and how systems like Workday and SAP and others are set up as you implement, but then others are just the day-to-day changes that happen in an employee workforce and making sure that you're consistently entering the right data. Right. So I don't think there's any one owner of that. I think you have to explain to people why it's important to get it right so that you don't end up basing your reports and advice on data that's wrong.
But how, I guess I'll push back a little bit that because
Yeah.
if there's no owner, there's no accountability. And then, you're really asking people out of the goodness of their heart for your own well-being to have the data right. And I'm sure most people for the right reasons understand it, but just
Right.
can't get to it if there's no owner and no accountability. So how do you
Well,
create
I
or
do.
help companies to create the accountability to make that happen? Because I
Well,
agree with you, you got to have it.
You got to have it. So I do think there are owners, right? Like in terms of job information in a system, that's compensation, right? They're creating jobs and they've got to have systems and processes related to jobs and grades and incentives and things like that. So comp obviously owns that. As it relates to employee attributes and things like that, hiring manager, right? Like working in consult with the recruiters if it's a new hire and if things are changing with their HR business partner and making sure that that hiring manager, ongoing manager and employee, that data is updated with collaboration with the right HR person. So there are owners for things. If it's supply chain data or finance data, obviously those functions would own that kind of data in a system. But you do have to have standards and you do have to have consistently educating HR people and others on why it's important to maintain and continue to meet those standards.
I think that'll be kind of before we jump to job architecture. That would be my takeaway from that is
Oh, yeah.
actually the educating why actually getting it right matters. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
just another task. So I think that ongoing education,
Yeah.
among other things, is pretty key. The job architecture, which I know you and I talked about it because I've presented on it, I've seen you present on it. Like
Yeah.
it's the foundation of everything, even
It
being in the
is.
software field. So to start with, the first pass of job architecture, do you think companies should lean to having someone external or internal do that? Because I'm a little biased actually on that one. Um, your
You know, I
thoughts?
I think it depends on the size of the company and what their needs are at that given point. So I'll give you an example. I've got one client right now, they're a startup. They have about 55 employees right now. We put in a basic grade structure, some titling guidelines. Now, we did not implement the titling standards and guidelines fully. We have, here's how we're going to move forward. So as people turn over or jobs change, they're going to move things to more of the standardization. But they have one pay grade structure. It's market price. The jobs are market price. We can repetitively do that year over year to make sure things are being, people are being paid competitively and not too much or too little. So that's basic for a small company. But I also have a client who had 38,000 employees and no comp function for more than 5 years. And they had to build it from the scratch, right? And we've been involved with them for 4 years. So I think it's a nice thing to do to have both internal and external people working together to build a job architecture. But at the end of the day, the internal people have to maintain it going forward, right? So I think you can get a lot from external consultants like myself in order to design and develop it. And they can teach you how to maintain it and they can be available on an ongoing basis. But I don't necessarily subscribe to the philosophy that consultants have to be embedded with employers ongoing forever. I think it's important to have in-house people know how to do this.
Yeah, I think my perspective is once you're ongoing, you can use them as a guideline. But I actually like, and people who know me, I'm typically, having worked at two consultancies, I'm actually anti-consultants in general as a starting point. But for job architecture in particular, I think it's cool to start with somebody with an external
Yeah.
view across and give you, and then you can edit it, hey, in our company,
Oh,
this is
yeah.
important, this is whatever. But I think having that external piece, even if you're a seasoned HR person, to come in and give you that first kind of starting point structure, even if you treat your consultant, obviously you're paying them a little bit as a peer, because it
Yeah.
is at that point, what you take at that point is what you run with. And so
Yeah.
if you start from a really crappy place, you climb a larger mountain. So for me, it's one of the few places where I've kind of said, use it, etc. And then I think there's some really cool technology out there now
Yes. To
that's out there
support.
to kind of
Right.
to support that once it's in there, but that
Yeah.
kind of ongoing piece. So it's interesting. So I would say internal and external. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it's a trick question, but I think we're saying kind of the same
Yeah,
thing.
same thing. I also think consultants can come and they work with different industries, different size firms. So they have lots of different tools in their toolkit or variations of the same thing in their toolkit. And so I think they can provide um, a level of skill and a level of understanding of what's happening across the marketplace and in
Yeah.
workplaces that internal people, like if you're internal for most of your career, you might have one or two opportunities to do a job architecture project, but consultants do many, many. And they have templates and tools and resources, or they should, that they can tap into to help you adapt and meet the needs of your business leaders and investors and so forth. So I think it's good. It's a good project for collaboration.
Yeah, and I think collaboration, knowledge transfer. I don't want to say
Yeah.
plagiarize or steal, but
No, no. And
well, I jokingly say like make sure for me when I've seen it go, it goes well, and where I've seen it kind of fall off later is you have the consultant do that job architecture project kind of in a silo because you're busy, and I
yeah,
gave it to Denise to do, and I'm just going to take it, but actually kind of walk the walk with them with the premise of grabbing as much knowledge as you can from them, the tools that they're using. So when I say plagiarize or steal, I'm joking a little bit. Basically, you want to take and get as much value from that consulting project as you
yeah,
can,
yeah.
and take it all in, as opposed to a handoff and you get a deliverable, which is really what you want. But you know,
There's
that
always some customization. I'm always worried when consultants just come in and rinse, repeat, like the same thing over and over for different employers. There's always something unique at every employer that needs to be accommodated, whether it's industry or employees in certain situations. So, it's not
But
one
that's
and
the
done.
questions I think you can ask in that process is what if I blend these? What if I move this up or down? What do you think the RAM? And that's that kind of peer-ish
Yeah,
thing to say in our organization, designers are worth more, graphic designers are worth more than others. So what if I make that my old school, I guess, hate points day, what
sure.
if I make this a 19 instead of a 16 because in our company, what's the ramifications of this? And so you're right. I think it's
Right.
all tailoring, but having someone there so you don't do it in a bubble,
Yeah,
before you
yeah.
launch. Because then once you launch, you're kind of got everyone in it. You're in
You're
it to win it.
committed and you've got a language and definitions of things, and it's hard to back out of that and change it once you've done it.
So if you had to pick all these things that you see, if you walk in somewhere and comp in particular always has limited resources.
Yeah.
Usually, they have unlimited staffing and budget, right, for what they need to get done. Um, yeah. Where would you start? What's the one or two, or is it job architecture? What's the most important thing for an organization to start? If you're new in a
In
place
an
or if you're tackling
organization.
a company who just says, Denise, come help us, where do you start?
It's understanding the business. How do they make money? What drives revenue and what drives expenses and profitability and so forth. So really getting in the minds of the business leaders on what they care about and what's critical to them, right? If you're working with a startup and they're just trying to scale and prove that what they have is something that's going to be embraced by the marketplace and they can gain market share if it's they're trying to be better than a competitor, great. If it's a more established company that has a niche that where they don't have too many competitors, it's a different game. So one, understanding the business, and then two, proving, like, looking for that low hanging fruit, right? Meaning finding projects or initiatives and things you can do where you prove your ability to align to business need, right? Where you can impact attraction, impact retention, or have some success metrics you can talk about after you've been there for a short time so that people go, oh, we need to keep coming back to you because you get it, right? We need to keep coming back to you and help. You can help me be successful. So understanding those types of things is what I start with.
That's actually, I mean, I don't think we hear it enough at comp, in general.
Yeah.
Every comp thing is about comp, 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 and how we're going to do comp and how we're going to do
It's
it.
business. You don't, it's how, what's the value creation chain in an organization is what you got to get embedded with.
Yeah.
And then the comp supports that, right?
No, and that'd probably be the number. Like, whatever else we talk about, that'd probably be the number one takeaway. I think
Yeah.
I see a lot of comp departments aren't aligning, to the business value or what the business
Yeah.
drivers are, and at some level, all employees are equal, which is philosophically great. But that's not true in any given business.
No,
There
it's
are
not. There's some employees and some jobs that are more critical than others, and people don't like to hear that. But, if you're a tech company, software developers are going to be on top, right? If you're a company where you're in manufacturing, it's going to be something different. So, yeah, I think, my philosophy when it comes to education and training is you don't necessarily have to make everybody happy in the room, but at least be honest and truthful about what you're doing and why and how you're making decisions. They don't necessarily have to like all of your answers, but at least be honest so that they
you have the
trust you.
ability now to take action on that. And by
Mm,
that, I mean, years ago, it was just too cumbersome to potentially treat people different in the company
It
because
was.
we're obviously closer to comp planning and see more of it day in and day out. But the whole point of where you mentioned software developers were more
Yeah.
important than maybe accountants. And in the old days, you're like, well, you don't want to say that out loud because we can't actually pay them more, pay them less, give them more in comp planning. It was too hard. The lift was too hard technically. But now
Yep.
actually you can
You
segment out the
can.
IT department and give them more and give them less and create
Yeah.
different merit matrix for each department. And so it's
Yep.
actually these discussions, while they seem awful as humans, to be like, actually, sorry, accounting team, you're not as valuable to the business.
Right.
And developers are. I think it's okay because A, it's aligning to the business, but B, you can actually strategically make moves on that. There's not
Yeah.
a there's
Technology can support those decisions, whereas before you might have that as an underlying theme, but you can't really implement because the tech wasn't there, the talent wasn't there to help get the tech in order. So yeah.
So those are all great points. And I would expect that from someone in consulting with its rainbows, unicorns, blue skies, and a pot of gold at the end of the project. So what have been the biggest hurdles? Like, so those are all great, and if they don't, happen, what have been the biggest hurdles you've seen where companies can't quite get to the point of having a solid program because of X or Y?
Um, yeah, budget and people, right? At the end of the day, if you don't have resources, budget, people, time, you can't get there, right? So I've worked with a lot of companies where internally within HR, as the HR function or the comp total rewards department, they have a vision for the future that is aligned to the business. But they haven't made themselves indispensable and remarkable to the business leaders, and so they don't have the influence to get the headcount or the budget to fund projects or even investments in technology like Visor that could be really impactful. They just don't have the clout internally to get stuff done. So I always go back to relationships, right? It's about understanding who your customers are internally if you're on a comp or total rewards team and what do they care about and delivering based on what their success metrics are, not necessarily what you think should be done, and getting really hyper focused on not your ego and what you want to do for the next year, but what they need. And then delivering in that and developing those relationships and trust so that then you can get funding and people to get the right work done that maybe you have a longer term vision for. I think that's where I see the most challenge in most HR functions these days.
Okay. And I mean, as far as getting budget, I mean, honestly, I think comp has been their own worst enemy sometimes because they magically get stuff done.
They
Um,
do. And Excel is
the
overused, I would argue. Excel is like ridiculously overused by a lot of employers for a lot of different things. And because companies won't invest in technology and solutions that are more robust and more efficient. One of the things when I'm doing a business case for technology is like, how many hours is somebody working on something behind the scenes level of effort that isn't being visible to senior
yeah,
leaders? And then how do you show that the technology could reduce that, right? So you can, while technology on the surface can look very expensive, if you look at it as a portion of headcount or full headcount, it can come in and really make efficiency and accuracy and decision making more streamlined. And
how would you
that
help comp? I mean, so particularly, obviously, we're faced with it a lot with some of the tools we have because Excel's used. And Excel, as I said on a panel at World of Work in May, like that shit's free.
it is.
And
It is.
so, and comp people jokingly, I think they struggle with getting the ROI or getting money because management says, Denise, you chose to be in comp,
Nothing's
so you give up 3 weekends in spring because that's the way
right.
you cycle. So how have you seen companies some best practices of creating a business case or ROI around that? Because I don't think management, this sounds awful. I don't think the CFO cares about your time because you're on salary. So
No, they
how else
don't.
do you tackle?
No, they don't. I think you have to get good at selling, right? You have to get good at influencing and you have to meet them where they are, right? So what is it about the software or the tool that you're going to do outside of Excel? one, hours, right? They may not care about that, but showing that level of work, yes. And then saying, if you could free me up so I don't have to do this, here's the other more strategic or consultative kind of work I can do. So there's an opportunity cost that if you don't say, this is what I'm spending time on, but you could deploy me or others on my team in terms of headcount, and we could get these other things done that aren't getting done for you. So I think you have to meet who your audience is and what they care about and talk in their language, and sometimes it takes years. You can plant a seed, but it doesn't automatically germinate and grow. You have to plant a seed and plant a seed and plant a seed, and it takes a couple years to get there. So yeah, and you just never stop, right? You just keep taking what you know to be true and keep putting it out there, and eventually it'll take. There's one thing that's always certain in any company is turnover, right? People come and go. So if you have one leader who's just being a roadblock and you just can't get through, you're probably going to get somebody else within the next 2 to 3 years in that seat, or a different seat, right? That you can maybe have some influence on. So just continuing to tell your story.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd build on that is telling that story and having that, communicating the whole vision of how it all works together, so
Yeah.
that management understands that this is kind of how we do things at a high level, and the tools and where we're tackling it with, just effort and muscle, and
Yeah.
basically putting that picture together so that the only time they see it isn't. You don't want the only time they see it is when you're asking for money. You want them to.
Once a year. Yeah, it has to be a continuing theme. One of the other things, I was just at an HR event yesterday here in Denver, and it was the speaker was Peter Capelli from the Wharton School of Business, and he's written a book, and it's called The Least Important Asset. So it's a play on the phrase we say people are our most important asset. But what it really talks about is the integration of financial accounting and human capital metrics, right? We don't look at employees as assets per se, and they're not on the balance sheet, but there are metrics you can show about human capital that aren't the financial metrics that your finance people care about, that really matter. And it's the management of people, right? It's turnover costs, time to fill positions, but it's also the quality of the people that you hire to fill positions. You should be
That's
talking.
my soapbox. I know we didn't talk about this, but that's my soapbox, because the example I use all the time is TA is measured on time to fill a number of recs, right? And that's a successful recruiter, but no one ever goes back and says, so theoretically, if you work that problem, the best way to be a successful recruiter is have people stay,
Yeah.
12, 15 months and create this ever-going churn of
Yeah.
recs for me to fill that I can fill quickly,
Yeah.
with people who won't stay for a long time, which isn't great for the business. And so
Right.
all those analytics together on my time to fill, and maybe the time's longer, but the people who take longer and we have a better process stay longer. So my overall cost is less and the business makes more money, tying all
Yeah.
those analytics together. And this is obviously where, Visio itself, it does, but there's other tools, but Visio said those analytics to tile that are available now. But the one thing I
Yes.
is what matters. And I think, I'm going to loop all the way back to your comment before on what actually matters for the business leaders. If you sat down and said, if I could fix 4 things or give you 4 numbers, what would
Right.
those 5 things be? 4 or 5 things, and
Yep.
then go back and start working on them and then measure it. It's the
Yeah.
same with comp planning. I get on
Yep.
kind of a little soapbox. People do comp planning and then they never go back and be like, did our plan work or did we suck?
Yeah. What were our success metrics? Did we, yeah,
Yeah.
measuring things. One of the best HR leaders I ever worked with, she encouraged each leader of each function within HR to go talk to consumer, the business sales folks, wholesale, all the different C-suite leaders who reported to the CEO, and said, what are those 3 metrics that you care about this year? And then HR and all the functions in HR lined up behind what each one of those leaders needed to accomplish in their success metrics. So what are our initiatives from an HR organization and community to make things happen that the senior leaders care about? I think that type of kind of golden thread in terms of goal setting and support to those folks. None of us are here and getting our paychecks because in HR or doing consulting work and stuff, unless we're creating value for the organization and helping them meet their sales goals and meet the needs of their customers. So at the end of the day, you got to get real clear on business objectives and how you support that, and less about what do I want to work on for the next year. It's not about you.
No, that's really great advice. And I think just, yeah, again, being able to measure, show forward progress, and
Yep.
then kind of aim, fire, aim, fire, aim, fire around continue to dialing in towards the bullseye.
Mhm.
I'm not smart enough to get it right the first time, but I try to keep, trying to keep better.
Yeah.
Um, I guess on the tech side, I guess, is there one kind of either cool tech you've seen, or how have you tackled the tech question with clients on how to leverage technology and figure out when to use it?
Um, usually I push them to embrace technology and buying something before they're ready to, because I know it takes time to influence those leaders to get budget for the tech investment. A lot of times I encourage clients to meet with a number of vendors who could provide the same type of solution, but in different ways. So that they get a sense of what's out there in the marketplace. So, having regular understanding and demos from tech firms so that you understand what's in the marketplace is really important, I think. And because they have a development roadmap, they're always changing, right? Every year, every 6 months, and so forth, they roll out changes to their tech. So you got to stay up on things. I think it's also important to develop relationships within your community, whether it's comp or HR, and understand what are other firms investing in? What are those, anecdotal kind of comments from folks about tech, and say, oh, I would invest in this one again 100 times, or this one did not work out well, and here's why. And making sure that you're getting not just the salesperson's viewpoint, but getting some of the users' viewpoints, right? So,
Well, yeah. Have you met the salesperson who says their stuff sucks yet? Like that's
right,
not.
exactly. They're always going to promote all the good stuff that they can do and not
Yeah, yeah.
hide all the stuff that behind the scenes that's not more of the problem. So actually, doing reference checks and saying, is what they're telling me true in practice? So
Well,
yeah,
the only thing I'll add there, and I've preached it before, is figure out what you want to solve first. There's a lot of
yeah,
tech out there, so
yeah,
don't back into what solution you're working on with the technology, but figure out what you want to solve and why.
yeah,
And then I would say more now than ever, what you're trying to solve, not how. As
yes,
you get on with
yes,
vendors, because otherwise you'll be in Excel forever, because you'll be doing a checkbox on things that are in Excel versus
yeah.
actually check out this cool stuff. I really like your idea of just networking locally and talking to people around how they're solving those problems. Because
Yeah,
sometimes the other answer might be like, we evaluated 10 pieces of tech and we're doing it this way and it's fine. And I can spend
right.
them somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, I make sure that I network because I don't know all the tech that's out there, but I've got a large community of HR folks that I ask questions of, and I post on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm looking for a tech solution that delivers X. Who would you recommend? And kind of crowdsource input too. If you've got a number of followers, you can do that. And again, the tech firms are always interested in meeting the needs of their customers. So just developing relationships with tech firms and
Yeah.
people to understand what their roadmap is and what they're trying to solve for can help you be a more progressive thought leader in your
We're
space.
not as scary developers as people make us out to be.
No.
Like us developers aren't as bad as advertised. Uh,
And you guys hear from so many different customers, right? So I only have insight into what if I'm in house, I only have insight into what my internal customers and
yeah.
world is. To talk to somebody who's in tech and talking to multiple customers and doing demos and listening to what is the marketplace looking for, that's incredibly insightful.
Yeah, and I'd just leave with again, figure out what you're trying to solve, not
Yes.
how. I mean, within reason, obviously, but come to the table with, the end goal in mind, not the
Yes.
bullets, and then, you can
There's
work through.
lots of ways to get to the same end result. Let
Good.
that be open to what they can show you. Yeah.
So as I wrap up, because that was all great, I really love tying it to the business and starting with the business. We probably don't hear that enough in all the sessions.
Oh,
Actually, just getting outside that lane and figuring out what's really important to the business. If you could auto magically solve one thing in all of HR, can be anything. What would you solve with a wave of a wand?
it's something we don't talk about enough, I think. You can get so many things, the rewards, the, talent development, talent management, acquiring talent. You can talk about culture, engagement, and all those things, but ultimately it comes down to interactions both at a group and individual level. I read a book called The Art of Alignment by a woman named Patty Beach, and she had an acronym in her book, and it's called SHUVA, SHUVA. And I think if we all practiced shuving each other, the world would change. And that is people being seen, heard, understood, valued, and appreciated. I can make the best rewards programs in the world, the best comp programs, etc. But at the end of the day, it's how I feel. Did I matter? Am I doing something meaningful? Am I learning and growing? Do they care about me? That's what I would magic wand solve, because I think we have too many people who are not feeling valued and heard and understood. And with that comes behaviors that aren't going to make your business a success.
I mean, that's a great one. Now I'm gonna have to go find that book. Um, See if it's in our local library. Uh,
It might be, I don't know,
yeah,
but it's a short, tiny book, but some very powerful practical
I think
steps on
that's great. I mean,
streamlining.
with the whole, is there a productivity drop in this productivity gap, and all this stuff, is that part of the problem that people are feeling, less like humans?
They do, and treating people like they're cogs in a wheel and are very dispensable is not a great way to get the best out of people. And I think, I think of it in terms of rewards, got to get it right, got to get the relationships right, and make sure that people are cared for and feel like they matter and that they make a difference. And then saying it, recognition, right? Like making that a common practice in your day to day interactions with people. That's what drives results. And I think too often we push on incentives and comp and some of those kinds of things. Nothing replaces good management of people and caring about each other. And we need to spend more time on that.
Awesome. That is a great way to end. That is a great message. I
Good.
really appreciate it. So for those kind of watching, subscribe and find it. We will also have Denise's information, and the link will be on there. So she's easy to find. She is very easy to, talk to, as you can tell. So feel free to reach out or corner her at one of the events because she's a wealth of information. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.